Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another deep dive into history. I hope you're all settling in comfortably wherever you are right now. Maybe you're tucked into bed, maybe you're relaxing on the couch, or perhaps you're just unwinding after a long day. And I want you to know that this is your safe space to learn and relax. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Tonight, we're going on an incredible journey back to the golden age of piracy in the Caribbean. And I want to take you to a world that was far more complex, fascinating, and human than anything you've seen in movies or read in adventure novels. We're going to explore the daily reality of life aboard pirate ships, the democratic societies they created, the relationships they formed, and the incredible diversity of people who chose this dangerous but potentially rewarding way of life. So get comfortable, maybe grab a warm drink, dim the lights, and let's sail back in time together to discover what it was really like to wake up each morning as a pirate in those crystal blue Caribbean waters between 1650 and 1730, where adventure, danger, and opportunity existed in equal measure, and where ordinary people could transform themselves into legends that would be remembered for centuries to come. Imagine you're waking up in 1695 on a pirate ship sailing between Jamaica and Tortuga. The sun is just rising over endless turquoise waters. You can feel the warm Caribbean breeze on your face. The ship rocks gently beneath your feet. But this isn't some romantic adventure story. This is real life. Being a pirate in the Caribbean was both the most dangerous and most democratic way of life you could imagine in the 17th century. Let's start with how someone actually became a pirate. It wasn't usually a childhood dream. Most pirates didn't wake up one day and decide to hoist the black flag. Instead, they were pushed into piracy by desperate circumstances. Think about this situation. You're a sailor in the Royal Navy. You've been pressed into service against your will. This means you were literally kidnapped off the streets of London or Bristol. You were forced onto a naval ship. You're paid almost nothing. The food is terrible. Officers beat you regularly. You might not see land for months at a time. Diseases like scurvy and typhus are killing your shipmates. You're beginning to wonder if you'll ever see your family again. Then one day your ship encounters a pirate vessel. After a brief battle, you're captured. But instead of being killed or tortured like you expected, something surprising happens. The pirate captain offers you a choice. Join their crew voluntarily and share in the profits, or be set free at the next port. Here's the shocking part. Many sailors chose to become pirates. Why? Because pirate ships were actually more democratic, more fair, and offered better living conditions than legitimate merchant or naval vessels. The Caribbean in the late 1600s and early 1700s was like the Wild West of the seas. It was a region where European colonial powers constantly fought over territory. Legitimate government authority was weak or non-existent in many areas. The line between legal privateering and illegal piracy was often blurred beyond recognition. Spain had claimed most of the Caribbean islands and the South American coast, but they couldn't possibly police such a vast area with their limited naval resources. Meanwhile, England, France, and the Netherlands were all trying to establish their own colonies and trading posts. They often did this by attacking Spanish settlements and treasure ships. These attacks were sometimes legal. They were carried out by privateers who had official government licenses called letters of marque. But sometimes they were completely illegal acts of piracy. The difference wasn't always clear to the people involved. The geography of the Caribbean was absolutely perfect for piracy. Think about hundreds of islands scattered across the sea. Thousands of hidden coves and bays where ships could disappear. Countless rivers and inlets provided perfect hiding spots. The trade winds made sailing relatively predictable. This was both good and bad for pirates. The Spanish treasure fleets carrying gold and silver from the Americas back to Europe had to follow specific routes because of these wind patterns. This made them sitting ducks for anyone who knew where to wait. Pirates could attack a treasure ship, then they could disappear into the maze of Caribbean islands before any naval vessel could respond. The colonial authorities were often too busy fighting each other to mount effective anti-piracy campaigns. It was like having a perfect storm of opportunity. Weak law enforcement, geographic advantages, all in one place. Now let's talk about what it was actually like to wake up as a pirate in the Caribbean. And I want you to imagine this scene in detail, because it's probably very different from what you've seen in movies. You wake up in your hammock, which is strung up in the lower deck of the ship alongside dozens of other hammocks. It's hot and humid even before dawn, and the air is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, tar, and the ever-present dampness of a wooden ship. You can hear the constant creaking of the ship's timbers as it rides the swells, and you can feel the gentle rolling motion that never stops. Some new pirates never get used to this motion and spend their first weeks constantly seasick. But eventually, it becomes as natural as walking on land. You roll out of your hammock, being careful not to bump into your shipmates, and make your way up to the deck, where the Caribbean dawn is just beginning to paint the sky in soft pastels. The air up here is fresher, filled with salt spray and the smell of the sea, and you can see the endless expanse of blue water stretching to the horizon in every direction. The first thing you do is check in with the watch, the group of pirates who have been on duty through the night, keeping the ship on course and watching for other vessels. Being on watch was serious business, because missing an approaching naval ship or failing to spot a potential target could mean the difference between life and death for the entire crew. A watch would report anything they had seen during the night, any ships on the horizon, any changes in the weather, or any problems with the ship itself. And it's time for the morning meal. And this is where pirate ships were actually quite different from naval or merchant vessels. Instead of having a single cook who prepared the same meal for everyone, pirate crews often organized themselves into small groups called messes. Each mess would take turns preparing meals for their group, sharing ingredients and cooking duties. This meant that there was actually quite a bit of variety in what pirates ate, depending on their skills, preferences, and what ingredients they had available. Speaking of food, let's talk about what pirates actually ate, because this is another area where reality was quite different from the popular image. You might think pirates lived on hardtack and rum, and while those were certainly staples, the reality was much more varied and interesting. When pirates captured a merchant ship, they would take not just gold and silver, but also food supplies, spices, cooking equipment, and anything else that could improve their quality of life. This meant that pirate crews often ate better than naval sailors, or even some people on land. They might have captured barrels of flour, sugar, coffee, chocolate, exotic spices, preserved meats, and tropical fruits. A successful pirate crew could feast on roasted pork, fresh fish, tropical fruits like mangoes and papayas, and bread baked fresh in the ship's galley. They could drink coffee, chocolate, wine, and yes, rum, but also tea, fruit juices, and fresh water when they could get it. The key was that pirates had more freedom to choose what they ate and how they prepared it, rather than being stuck with whatever the ship's officers decided to provide. The social structure on a pirate ship was fascinating and surprisingly democratic. Most pirate crews operated under what was called the Pirates' Code or Articles of Agreement. These were written rules that every crew member had to agree to before joining the ship, and they covered everything from how treasure would be divided to what punishments would be given for various crimes. These articles were usually voted on by the entire crew, and they could be changed if the majority agreed. This was radically different from naval or merchant ships, where the captain had absolute authority and could make decisions without consulting anyone. On a pirate ship, major decisions were often put to a vote, The crew could even vote to remove a captain if they were unhappy with his leadership. And many important positions like quartermaster and bosun were elected by the crew rather than appointed by the captain. This democratic system wasn't perfect, and it sometimes led to conflicts and power struggles, but it meant that ordinary pirates had much more say in their own lives than they would have had in any other maritime profession. The division of treasure was governed by strict rules that were surprisingly fair and egalitarian, contrary to the popular image of pirate captains hoarding all the wealth while their crews lived in poverty. Most pirate ships divided their loot. According to predetermined shares, the captain might receive 2 or 3 shares. The quartermaster and other officers might receive 1.5 shares, and ordinary crew members would receive 1 share each. This meant that even the lowest ranking pirate received a substantial portion of any treasure they captured, and successful pirates could become quite wealthy. Some pirates accumulated enough wealth to buy their own ships, retire to respectable lives on land, or even purchase pardons from colonial governors. The democratic nature of treasure division was one of the main reasons why piracy was attractive to sailors who were used to working for fixed wages, regardless of how successful their voyages were. Daily life on a pirate ship involved much more than just fighting and treasure hunting. Most of the time was spent on the routine tasks necessary to keep a wooden sailing ship operational in the harsh marine environment. The ship's hull had to be constantly maintained because sea worms would bore holes in the wood. The sails had to be repaired when they were damaged by storms or battles. The rigging had to be checked and adjusted regularly, and the entire ship had to be cleaned and organized to prevent disease and maintain morale. Pirates also spent a lot of time practicing their fighting skills, both with individual weapons like swords and pistols, and with the ship's cannons. A pirate crew that couldn't fight effectively wouldn't survive long, so training was an ongoing process. They would practice sword fighting, marksmanship, and naval tactics whenever they had the opportunity. Many pirates became extremely skilled fighters, not just because of natural talent, but because their lives depended on their ability to outfight their enemies. The weapons that pirates used were quite varied, and often depended on personal preference and what was available. The popular image of pirates with cutlasses and flintlock pistols is somewhat accurate, but it's not the complete picture. Cutlasses were indeed popular because they were short enough to be useful in the confined spaces of a ship, but pirates also used longer swords, daggers, axes, and even improvised weapons like marlin spikes and belaying pins. Firearms were becoming more common during the golden age of piracy, but they were still unreliable and took a long time to reload. So pirates often carried multiple pistols and relied on melee weapons for extended fighting. Some pirates became famous for their distinctive weapons or fighting styles. Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, was said to carry 6 pistols and light slow matches in his beard to create a terrifying appearance, while other pirates preferred to rely on speed and agility rather than intimidation. The relationship between pirates and the various Caribbean colonies was complex and constantly changing. Pirates were officially criminals and enemies of all legitimate governments, but in reality, they often had complicated relationships with colonial officials, merchants, and even naval officers. Some colonial governors secretly supported pirates because they brought wealth to their ports and helped defend against enemy nations. Pirates would sell their captured goods in colonial markets, often at prices below what legitimate merchants could offer. This made them popular with local consumers, even if the authorities officially disapproved. Some pirates even held official positions or titles in colonial governance. The famous pirate Henry Morgan was actually knighted by the English king and served as lieutenant governor of Jamaica, and many other pirates received pardons and went on to become respectable members of colonial society. The line between pirate and privateer, between criminal and patriot, was often blurred in the politically chaotic world of the 17th and 18th century Caribbean. Women played a much larger role in Caribbean piracy than most people realize. While the popular image of pirates is almost entirely male, there were actually quite a few female pirates who were just as successful and feared as their male counterparts. Anne Bonny and Mary Red are probably the most famous female pirates in Caribbean history. Both sailed with the pirate captain Calico Jack Rackham and were known for their fierce fighting abilities. But there were many other women involved in piracy in various ways. Some disguised themselves as men and served as regular crew members. Others worked as spies, smugglers, or operators of safe houses on land. Still others inherited or purchased pirate ships and commanded their own crews. The democratic nature of pirate society meant that women could sometimes achieve positions of authority that would have been impossible in legitimate society, though they still faced significant challenges and discrimination. The daily routine on a pirate ship was dictated by the needs of sailing and the constant search for potential targets. The day would begin before dawn with the change of watch, followed by a quick breakfast and the assignment of daily tasks. Some crew members would be assigned to maintenance work, others to navigation and sailing duties, and still others to standing watch for other ships. If another vessel was spotted, the entire crew would spring into action, first trying to identify whether it was a potential target, a threat, or just another ship going about its business. If it looked like a promising target, the pirates would begin the complex process of pursuit and capture. This involved not just sailing skills, but also psychology and intimidation. Many pirates preferred to capture their targets without fighting if possible. Because battles were dangerous and could damage valuable cargo, they would approach under false colors, pretending to be a harmless merchant ship or even a naval vessel, then reveal their true identity at the last moment, when it was too late for their target to escape. The actual process of capturing a ship was often more complicated than the movies suggest. Pirates had to consider wind direction, the sailing capabilities of both ships, the number of crew members on each vessel, and the potential value of the cargo. They also had to think about what they would do with their captives and how they would dispose of the captured goods. Simply sinking every ship they captured would have been wasteful and would have quickly brought down the wrath of every naval force in the Caribbean. Instead, pirates usually tried to take what they wanted and then release their captives, sometimes even giving them safe passage to the nearest port. This wasn't necessarily out of kindness, but rather because it made practical sense. Pirates who were known for treating their captives well were more likely to receive cooperation and less likely to face determined resistance. The psychological warfare that pirates used was often more effective than their actual weapons. Many pirate crews cultivated fearsome reputations that preceded them, using distinctive flags, dramatic appearance, and stories of their exploits to terrorize potential victims into surrendering without a fight. The famous Jolly Roger flag, with its skull and crossbones, was just one of many designs that pirates used to identify themselves and strike fear into their enemies. Some pirates created their own unique flags with personal symbols. Others adopted different designs for different purposes. The sight of a known pirate flag on the horizon was often enough to make merchant ships surrender immediately, saving everyone involved from a potentially deadly battle. This psychological approach was so effective that some pirates rarely had to actually fight, instead relying on their reputation to do the work for them. Life aboard a pirate ship wasn't all adventure and excitement. There were long periods of boredom when no targets were available, and the crew had to occupy themselves with routine tasks and entertainment. Pirates developed various ways to pass the time during these quiet periods. Gambling was extremely popular, with dice games, card games, and betting on everything from the weather to the behavior of seabirds. Music was also important. Many pirate crews included musicians who would play fiddles, drums, and other instruments to boost morale and provide entertainment. Storytelling was another favorite pastime, with experienced pirates sharing tales of their adventures, close calls, and the exotic places they had visited. Some pirates were well educated and could read, leading to the sharing of books and newspapers when they were available. Others practiced crafts like scrimshaw, carving, or rope work, creating beautiful objects from the materials at hand. That the relationship between pirates and the indigenous peoples of the Caribbean was complex and varied greatly, depending on the specific circumstances. Some pirates formed alliances with native groups, who were also enemies of the Spanish colonizers. These alliances could be mutually beneficial, with pirates providing weapons and manufactured goods in exchange for local knowledge, safe harbors, and assistance in evading colonial authorities. Other pirates simply raided indigenous communities like any other target, taking whatever they could find and leaving destruction in their wake. Still others developed more complex relationships, sometimes taking indigenous wives or partners, learning local languages and customs, and becoming integrated into local communities. Some of the most successful pirates were those who understood and respected local cultures, because this knowledge gave them significant advantages in navigation, weather prediction, and finding hidden bases of operation. The medical care available to pirates was primitive by modern standards, but it was often better than what was available to sailors on legitimate ships. Because pirates shared in the profits of their ventures, they had more resources to spend. On medical supplies and care, many pirate crews included members with some medical knowledge, either trained surgeons who had joined the crew or experienced sailors who had learned basic medical skills through necessity. Pirates also had access to traditional medicines and treatments from the various cultures they encountered, including indigenous remedies from the Caribbean islands and medical knowledge from captured ships and crew members. Despite these advantages, disease and injury were constant threats to pirate crews. Tropical diseases like yellow fever and malaria could devastate an entire crew, and the violent nature of piracy meant that wounds from battles were common. Many pirates retired early due to injuries, and pirate crews often included members who had lost limbs, eyes, or other body parts in their adventures. The economic impact of piracy on the Caribbean was enormous and is often underestimated by historians. Pirates weren't just criminals operating on the margins of society. They were a major economic force that affected trade, politics, and daily life throughout the region. The goods that pirates captured and sold in colonial markets helped keep prices low and provided access to luxury items that might otherwise have been unaffordable. Pirate crews also spent their money in colonial ports, supporting local businesses and contributing to the growth of cities like Port Royal in Jamaica and Tortuga in Haiti. Some estimates suggest that piracy was responsible for a significant portion of the economic activity in certain Caribbean colonies, particularly during the late 17th century when piracy was at its peak. This economic impact helps explain why colonial authorities were often reluctant to crack down too hard on piracy, despite official policies condemning it. The technological innovations that came out of pirate activities were significant and often overlooked. Pirates were early adopters of new sailing techniques, weapons, and navigation methods because their lives depended on having every possible advantage. They modified their ships for speed and maneuverability, developed new fighting tactics, and created improved versions of existing weapons. Some pirates were skilled craftsmen who could repair and modify equipment using whatever materials were available. This innovative spirit was partly driven by necessity, since pirates couldn't always rely on legitimate sources for supplies and equipment. But it also reflected the creative and entrepreneurial nature of many people who chose the pirate life. Some of the sailing and fighting techniques developed by pirates were eventually adopted by legitimate navies and merchant fleets. The seasonal patterns of piracy in the Caribbean were closely tied to weather, trade routes, and the agricultural cycles of the various colonies. The hurricane season, which runs from June through November, was a particularly dangerous time for all maritime activities, but it also provided opportunities for pirates who were willing to take risks. Storms could drive merchant ships off course, making them easy targets, and the rough weather made it difficult for naval patrols to operate effectively. Conversely, the calmer months were better for long-distance voyages and major operations. But they also brought increased naval activity as governments tried to protect their shipping. Successful pirate crews learned to adjust their activities to take advantage of these seasonal patterns, planning major raids during optimal weather conditions and using the off-season for maintenance, recruitment, and planning. The cultural exchange that occurred through piracy was remarkable and helped shape the unique character of Caribbean society. Pirate crews were incredibly diverse, including people from Europe, Africa, the Americas, and sometimes even Asia. This diversity meant that pirate ships were melting pots of different languages, customs, religions, and traditions. Pirates learned from each other, adopting useful practices and sharing knowledge about everything from navigation to cooking to fighting techniques. This cultural mixing extended to the ports and colonies where pirates operated, contributing to the development of the distinctive Caribbean culture that combined elements from many different traditions, some of the music, food, and customs that we associate with the Caribbean today have their roots in this period of cultural exchange facilitated by piracy and other maritime activities. The intelligence networks that pirates developed were sophisticated and far-reaching. Successful piracy required detailed knowledge about shipping schedules, cargo manifests, naval patrol patterns, and political developments throughout the Caribbean. Pirates developed networks of informants in major ports, including merchants, dock workers, tavern keepers, and even colonial officials. These networks provided crucial information about when valuable ships would be sailing, what routes they would take, and what defenses they might encounter. Some pirates specialized in gathering and selling intelligence, becoming brokers of information, rather than traditional raiders. This intelligence gathering was so important that pirates often spent more time and resources on it than on their actual attacks, because good information could mean the difference between a successful raid and a disaster. The retirement plans of pirates were as varied as the pirates themselves. Contrary to the popular image of pirates as reckless adventurers who lived only for the moment, many pirates were actually quite practical about planning for their future. Some saved their money and invested in legitimate businesses, using their profits from piracy to buy plantations, ships, or other assets. Others used their wealth to purchase pardons from colonial governments, essentially buying their way back into respectable society. Still others retired to remote islands or colonies where they could live quietly without attracting attention from authorities. A few became so wealthy that they could afford to live like nobility, building grand houses and living in luxury. The most successful pirates were often those who knew when to quit, recognizing that piracy was a young person's game and that the risks increased with every year they remained active. The legal system that governed piracy was complex and often contradictory. Piracy was officially a capital crime in most jurisdictions, punishable by death, but the reality was much more nuanced. Colonial courts sometimes refused to convict pirates, who were popular with local communities, and even when pirates were convicted, sentences were often commuted or pardoned. The famous pirate trials in places like Boston and London were major public events that attracted huge crowds and extensive newspaper coverage. These trials served partly as entertainment and partly as warnings to potential pirates, but they also revealed the complex relationships between pirates, colonial authorities, and the general public. Some pirates became folk heroes during their trials, with their wit and defiance making them popular figures even as they faced execution. The environmental impact of piracy on the Caribbean was significant in ways that are only now being understood by historians and archaeologists. Pirate activities contributed to the deforestation of many islands as crews cut down trees to repair their ships and build temporary shelters, They also affected local wildlife populations through hunting and fishing. Some islands that served as pirate bases were completely transformed by human activity, with native plants and animals being replaced by introduced species. The shipwrecks left behind by centuries of piracy have created artificial reefs that now support diverse marine ecosystems, but they have also contributed to pollution and habitat destruction. Understanding this environmental impact helps us see piracy not just as a human story, but as part of the broader history of European colonization and environmental change in the Caribbean. The religious beliefs and practices of pirates were as diverse as their cultural backgrounds. Despite the popular image of pirates as godless criminals, many pirates were actually quite religious, though their beliefs and practices were often unconventional by the standards of their time. Some pirate crews included chaplains or other religious figures, and religious services were sometimes held on board ship. Pirates often carried religious talismans or amulets for protection, and many believed in various forms of supernatural intervention in their lives. The mixing of different religious traditions within pirate crews led to the development of syncretic beliefs that combined elements from Christianity, African religions, indigenous American traditions, and other sources. These religious practices provided comfort and meaning to people living dangerous and uncertain lives, and they also served as a form of social cohesion that helped hold diverse crews together. The linguistic diversity of pirate crews was remarkable and contributed to the development of maritime languages and slang that influenced sailor speech for centuries. A typical pirate crew might include speakers of English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Dutch, various African languages, and indigenous American languages. This diversity meant that pirates had to develop ways of communicating across language barriers, leading to the creation of pidgin languages and the adoption of universal hand signals and other nonverbal communication methods. Many of the nautical terms and expressions that we associate with pirates actually originated from this multilingual environment, where practical communication was more important than proper grammar or pronunciation. The influence of pirate language can still be seen in modern maritime terminology and in the popular culture representations of pirates. The family lives of pirates were often more complex and important than the popular image suggests. While some pirates were indeed rootless adventurers with no permanent ties, many others maintained relationships with families and communities. On land, some pirates had wives and children in various ports, creating extended family networks across the Caribbean. Others sent money home to support relatives in Europe or elsewhere. Still others eventually brought their families to live with them in the Caribbean, creating pirate dynasties that lasted for generations. The children of pirates sometimes followed their parents into the trade, but others used their inheritance to pursue legitimate careers. The family connections of pirates often provided crucial support networks that helped them survive the dangers of their profession and plan for their eventual retirement. The shipbuilding and maintenance skills that pirates developed were crucial to their success and represent an often overlooked aspect of pirate culture. Maintaining a wooden sailing ship in the tropical Caribbean environment was a constant challenge. That required specialized knowledge and skills. Pirates had to be able to repair battle damage, replace worn-out parts, and modify their ships for optimal performance. Many pirate crews included skilled carpenters, sailmakers, and other craftsmen who could keep their ships in fighting condition. Some pirates became so skilled at ship modification that they could transform a captured merchant vessel into a fast, well-armed pirate ship in a matter of weeks. This technical expertise was one of the things that made piracy sustainable as a way of life, because crews that couldn't maintain their ships would quickly find themselves stranded or vulnerable to attack. The navigation techniques used by pirates were often more advanced than those used by legitimate sailors, because pirates needed to be able to find their way to remote hideouts, navigate through dangerous waters, and approach their targets from unexpected directions. Many pirates became expert navigators who could read the stars, interpret weather patterns, and use local knowledge to find their way in areas where conventional maps were inadequate or non-existent. Some pirates specialized in piloting, guiding other ships through dangerous waters in exchange for a share of the profits. This navigational expertise was partly learned from indigenous peoples who had been sailing Caribbean waters for centuries. Before European arrival, and partly developed through the trial and error of practical experience, pirates who couldn't navigate effectively didn't survive long in the business. The musical traditions of pirates were rich and varied, reflecting the cultural diversity of pirate crews and the importance of music in maintaining morale during long voyages. Sea shanties and work songs helped coordinate group activities like raising sails or hauling anchor, while entertainment music provided relief from the boredom and stress of pirate life. Many pirate crews included professional musicians who were valued members of the team. Some pirates wrote their own songs about their adventures, creating a body of maritime folk music that influenced sailor culture for generations. The instruments used by pirates included fiddles, drums, pipes, and various improvised percussion instruments. Music was also used as a form of psychological warfare, with some pirates using drums and horns to intimidate their enemies or coordinate attacks. The musical traditions of pirates contributed to the development of Caribbean folk music and eventually influenced modern genres like calypso and reggae. The diplomatic relationships that some pirates maintained with various governments and organizations were surprisingly sophisticated. Successful pirate leaders often operated as quasi-political figures, negotiating treaties, forming alliances, and even representing their crews in formal diplomatic contexts. Some pirates obtained official commissions as privateers from various governments, giving them legal cover for their activities. Others negotiated complex agreements with colonial authorities, offering protection or services in exchange for safe harbor or other benefits. The most successful pirate leaders were often those who understood the political landscape of the Caribbean and could navigate the complex relationships between different colonial powers, indigenous groups, and other pirates. This diplomatic skill was particularly important during times of war, when the line between legitimate privateering and illegal piracy became even more blurred. The educational opportunities available to pirates were limited but significant. Many pirates were illiterate when they joined their crews, but the practical needs of piracy meant that education was often valued and encouraged. Navigation required mathematical skills and the ability to read charts and tables. Keeping accounts of treasure and expenses required basic literacy and numeracy, and communication with other ships and authorities often required writing skills. Some pirate crews included educated members who served as teachers, helping their shipmates learn to read, write, and calculate. The democratic nature of pirate society meant that education could lead to advancement within the crew, with literate pirates often becoming officers or specialists. Some pirates used their earnings to educate their children, ensuring that the next generation would have better opportunities than they had. The technological innovations in weapons and tactics that emerged from pirate warfare had lasting impacts on naval combat. Pirates were early adopters of new weapons, technologies, and were often willing to experiment with unconventional tactics that more traditional military forces would have rejected. The fast, lightly armed ships preferred by many pirates required different fighting techniques than the heavy warships used by navies, leading to the development of new approaches to naval combat that emphasized speed, surprise, and psychological warfare over brute force. Some of the tactics developed by pirates were eventually adopted by legitimate navies, particularly techniques for boarding enemy ships and fighting in close quarters. The weapons modifications made by pirates, such as shortened muskets and specialized pistols, also influenced the development of naval weapons. Pirates were also among the first to use explosive devices in naval combat, creating primitive grenades and fire ships that could devastate enemy vessels. The social mobility that piracy offered was unprecedented. In the rigid class systems of the 17th and 18th centuries, a common sailor who joined a pirate crew could potentially become a captain or acquire enough wealth to live like a gentleman, regardless of his birth or background. This opportunity for advancement was one of the main attractions of piracy for people from lower social classes. And it helps explain why piracy continued to attract recruits despite its obvious dangers. Some former pirates used their wealth and experience to become successful merchants, plantation owners, or even colonial officials, essentially buying their way into respectable society. Others chose to remain in the maritime world, but in legitimate roles, becoming ship captains, harbor pilots, or naval officers. The skills learned through piracy, including leadership, navigation, and combat, were often transferable to legitimate careers, making piracy a form of alternative education for people who had few other opportunities. The impact of piracy on global trade patterns was significant and long-lasting. Pirate activities forced merchants and governments to develop new strategies for protecting their shipping, including the use of convoys, armed escorts, and alternative routes. The costs of these protective measures were ultimately passed on to consumers, making imported goods more expensive and affecting trade balances between different regions. Some trade routes became so dangerous that they were abandoned entirely, while others were developed specifically to avoid known pirate havens. The uncertainty created by piracy also led to the development of new forms of maritime insurance and financing. As merchants sought ways to protect themselves against losses, these innovations in trade and finance had lasting effects that extended far beyond the Caribbean and continued long after the golden age of piracy had ended. The cultural legacy of Caribbean piracy extends far beyond the stereotypes and myths that dominate popular culture. The democratic ideals and practices developed by pirate crews influenced later political movements and social reforms. The cultural mixing that occurred on pirate ships contributed to the development of Creole cultures throughout the Caribbean, and the economic networks established by pirates helped lay the foundation for modern Caribbean commerce. The stories and legends of pirates became part of the oral tradition of many Korean communities, influencing local folklore and cultural identity. Even today, the history of piracy continues to shape how people think about freedom, adventure, and resistance to authority. The real story of Caribbean piracy is far more complex and interesting than the simplified version we see in movies and books. It's a story about ordinary people who chose an extraordinary life, about the collision of different cultures and the birth of new ones, about the search for freedom and opportunity in a world that offered few of either, and about the enduring human desire for adventure and independence. The spiritual beliefs and superstitions of pirates were as varied as their backgrounds. Many pirates were deeply superstitious, believing in omens, lucky charms, and the power of certain rituals to protect them from harm. They would often refuse to sail on certain days considered unlucky, or would perform elaborate ceremonies before important raids. Some pirates carried specific items they believed brought them luck, such as rabbit's feet, coins, or religious medals. Others had tattoos that they thought would protect them or give them strength in battle. The mixing of different cultural traditions on pirate ships led to the development of unique superstitions that combined elements from European, African, and indigenous American beliefs. Many pirates believed in the power of curses and would go to great lengths to avoid offending spirits or supernatural forces they thought might influence their success. These beliefs provided psychological comfort in a dangerous profession where death could come at any moment, and they also served as a form of social bonding among crew members who shared the same superstitions and rituals. The apprenticeship system that existed among pirates was crucial for passing on skills and knowledge from experienced crew members to newcomers. Young men who joined pirate crews were often taken under the wing of older pirates who taught them everything from basic seamanship to advanced fighting techniques. This mentorship system ensured that important skills wouldn't be lost when experienced pirates retired or died. And it also helped integrate new crew members into the social fabric of the ship. Apprentice pirates would start with simple tasks like cleaning weapons or helping in the galley, then gradually take on more complex responsibilities as they gained experience and proved their worth. The relationship between mentor and apprentice was often very close, with older pirates taking genuine pride in the development of their students. Some pirates specialized in training others and were sought after for their teaching abilities. This informal education system was remarkably effective at producing skilled sailors and fighters, and it helped maintain the high standards of seamanship and combat effectiveness that successful pirate crews required. The trade routes that pirates targeted were carefully chosen based on detailed knowledge of shipping patterns, seasonal variations, and the types of cargo that different vessels typically carried. Spanish treasure ships carrying gold and silver from the Americas were obviously the most prized targets. But pirates also attacked ships carrying other valuable commodities like sugar, tobacco, coffee, spices, and manufactured goods. The timing of these attacks was crucial, as pirates needed to know when specific ships would be passing through particular areas. They developed sophisticated intelligence networks that included informants in major ports who could provide information about sailing schedules and cargo manifests. Some pirates specialized in attacking specific types of ships or cargo, becoming experts in the particular challenges and opportunities associated with different kinds of targets. The most successful pirate crews were those that could adapt their tactics to different situations, whether they were attacking a heavily armed treasure galleon or a lightly defended merchant vessel carrying trade goods. The impact of weather on pirate operations cannot be overstated. The Caribbean's tropical climate brought both opportunities and challenges that pirates had to learn to navigate. The hurricane season from June to November was particularly dangerous, with massive storms that could destroy ships or drive them far off course. But pirates who were skilled at reading weather signs could sometimes use storms to their advantage, using the cover of rough weather to approach their targets undetected or to escape from pursuing naval vessels. The trade winds that blow consistently across the Caribbean were crucial for all sailing vessels, and pirates became expert at using these winds to maximize their speed and maneuverability. The seasonal variations in weather also affected the movement of merchant shipping, with certain times of year being much more profitable for piracy than others. Experienced pirates learned to plan their activities around these weather patterns, spending the most dangerous months in secure harbors, while preparing for raids during more favorable conditions. The territorial disputes between European colonial powers created opportunities for pirates that were both lucrative and dangerous. When Spain, England, France, and the Netherlands were at war with each other, which happened frequently during the golden age of piracy, the line between legitimate privateering and illegal piracy became very blurred. Pirates could sometimes obtain letters of marque from one government authorizing them to attack the ships of another nation. But these same pirates might be considered criminals by other governments. This political complexity meant that pirates had to be constantly aware of changing international situations and the implications for their own activities. A pirate who had been operating legally as a privateer might suddenly find himself classified as a criminal if political alliances shifted. Conversely, pirates who had been outlaws might find opportunities to legitimize their activities by obtaining official commissions. The most successful pirate leaders were often those who understood these political dynamics and could navigate the complex relationships between different colonial powers. The role of alcohol in pirate culture was significant, but more complex than the popular stereotype suggests. While rum was indeed a staple of pirate life, It served practical as well as recreational purposes. Alcohol helped preserve water during long voyages, provided calories and some nutritional value, and served as a form of medicine for treating various ailments. Pirates also used alcohol as a form of currency, trading rum and wine for other goods and services. The social aspects of drinking were important for maintaining crew morale and solidarity, with shared drinking sessions serving as a form of celebration after successful raids or as a way of bonding during long periods at sea. However, excessive drinking could also be a serious problem on pirate ships, leading to fights, accidents, and poor decision-making. Many pirate codes included rules about drinking, either limiting alcohol consumption during certain activities or establishing punishments for crew members who became too intoxicated to perform their duties. The relationship between pirates and alcohol reflects the broader challenges of maintaining discipline and effectiveness in a profession that attracted people seeking freedom from conventional social constraints. The environmental knowledge that pirates developed was extensive and sophisticated. Successful piracy required intimate familiarity with the geography, weather patterns, tides, currents, and seasonal variations of the Caribbean region. Pirates became expert at reading natural signs that could help them navigate, predict weather changes, or find sources of fresh water and food. They learned which islands had safe harbors, where fresh water could be found, and which areas were likely to be patrolled by naval vessels. This environmental knowledge was often acquired from indigenous peoples who had been living in the Caribbean for thousands of years before European arrival, and it was supplemented by information gathered from captured sailors, local fishermen, and other sources. Pirates who lacked this environmental knowledge were at a severe disadvantage and were unlikely to survive long, while those who mastered it could operate with confidence in areas where other sailors feared to go. This intimate connection with the natural environment was one of the things that distinguished successful pirates from less experienced maritime criminals. The communication systems used by pirates were sophisticated and included both formal and informal methods of sharing information. Pirate ships used flags, signal fires, and coded messages to communicate with each other across long distances. Different flag combinations could convey complex information about threats, opportunities, or planned activities. Some pirates developed their own codes in ciphers for written communications, particularly when sending messages that might be intercepted by authorities. The informal communication networks among pirates were equally important, with information being shared through word of mouth in taverns, markets, and other meeting places throughout the Caribbean. Pirates also maintained correspondence with family members, business associates, and informants on land, creating communication networks that spanned the entire region. The speed and reliability of these communication systems were crucial for coordinating complex operations and staying ahead of naval patrols. Pirates who were cut off from these information networks found themselves operating blind, with little knowledge of threats or opportunities in their area. The construction and modification of pirate vessels was a specialized skill that combined traditional shipbuilding techniques with innovations designed to meet the specific needs of piracy. Pirates preferred ships that were fast, maneuverable, and capable of operating in shallow waters where larger naval vessels couldn't follow. This often meant modifying captured ships by removing unnecessary weight, adding more sails, or changing the configuration of weapons and crew quarters. Some pirates became expert shipwrights who could transform a slow merchant vessel into a swift raider in a matter of weeks. The choice of ship was crucial for different types of piracy, with some pirates preferring small, fast sloops for hit and run attacks, while others used larger ships capable of taking on well-armed targets. The maintenance of these vessels required constant attention, as the tropical environment was harsh on wooden ships, with heat, humidity, and various organisms constantly working to destroy the hull and rigging. Pirates who couldn't maintain their ships properly would soon find themselves stranded or vulnerable to attack. The artistic and cultural expressions of pirates included not just music and storytelling, but also visual arts, crafts, and forms of personal decoration that reflected their unique lifestyle and values. Many pirates decorated their ships with elaborate figureheads, colorful paint schemes, and distinctive flags that served both practical and aesthetic purposes. Personal decoration was also important, with pirates often wearing distinctive clothing, jewelry, and tattoos that reflected their status, achievements, or cultural background. Some pirates were skilled artists who created maps, drawings, and other visual records of their travels and adventures. Others practiced crafts like scrimshaw, carving, or metalwork during quiet periods at sea. These artistic expressions served multiple purposes, providing entertainment and creative outlet, establishing individual and group identity, and sometimes serving practical functions like navigation or communication. The democratic nature of pirate society meant that artistic talent was often recognized and valued regardless of a person's social background, leading to the development of distinctive pirate aesthetic traditions that influenced broader Caribbean culture. The judicial systems that pirates developed for resolving disputes and maintaining order were remarkably sophisticated for what were essentially criminal organizations. Most pirate crews had established procedures for handling conflicts between crew members, violations of the ship's articles, and other disciplinary issues. These procedures often included formal hearings where accused parties could present their defense, the testimony of witnesses, and voting by the entire crew to determine guilt and punishment. The punishments used by pirates ranged from fines and loss of privileges to physical punishment and even execution in extreme cases. But the emphasis was usually on maintaining crew cohesion and effectiveness rather than simply punishing wrongdoers. Some pirates specialized in serving as judges or arbitrators, and their skills in conflict resolution were highly valued. The fairness and effectiveness of these judicial systems was crucial for maintaining discipline and morale among crews that were composed of diverse individuals with no traditional authority structure to fall back on. The legacy of pirate innovations in maritime technology and tactics can still be seen today in modern naval and commercial shipping practices. Pirates were among the first to use certain types of weapons, sailing techniques, and ship modifications that were later adopted by legitimate maritime forces. Their emphasis on speed, maneuverability, and psychological warfare influenced the development of naval tactics for centuries. Some of the navigation techniques and weather prediction methods developed by pirates were incorporated into standard maritime practice, and their democratic approach to ship management influenced later reforms in naval discipline and crew welfare. The entrepreneurial spirit of pirates also contributed to innovations in maritime commerce, insurance, and finance, as legitimate businesses sought ways to compete with or protect themselves from pirate activities. Even today, the influence of pirate culture can be seen in everything from maritime law to popular entertainment, demonstrating the lasting impact of these 17th and 18th century maritime rebels. The seasonal migration patterns of pirates throughout the Caribbean were influenced by numerous factors, including weather, trade routes, colonial activities, and the availability of supplies and safe harbors. During the hurricane season, many pirate crews would seek shelter in protected bays and inlets, using this time to repair their ships, recruit new crew members, and plan future operations. Some pirates established semi-permanent bases on remote islands where they could store supplies, careen their ships, and maintain a presence even when their main crew was elsewhere. These bases often became small communities with their own economies, social structures, and defensive capabilities. The most famous of these pirate strongholds included Tortuga off the coast of Haiti, Nassau in the Bahamas, and various hidden harbors throughout the Lesser Antilles. These locations were chosen for their strategic advantages, including proximity to major shipping lanes, availability of fresh water and provisions, and natural defenses that made them difficult for naval forces to attack. The social hierarchies within pirate crews were far more fluid and merit-based than those found in conventional maritime or land-based societies. While there were certainly distinctions between officers and ordinary crew members, these distinctions were usually based on skill, experience, and the respect of one's peers, rather than birth, wealth, or political connections. A talented navigator could rise to become a ship's officer regardless of his background, and even captains could be voted out of their positions if they lost the confidence of their crews. This social mobility was one of the most attractive aspects of pirate life for people from lower classes, who had little opportunity for advancement. In legitimate society, some pirates who started as common sailors eventually became wealthy and influential captains, commanding multiple ships and hundreds of followers, while others chose to specialize in particular skills like navigation, gunnery, or medicine, becoming valued experts whose services were sought throughout the pirate community. The economic systems that pirates developed were surprisingly sophisticated and often more equitable than those found in legitimate society. Beyond the famous treasure-sharing arrangements, pirate crews created complex systems for managing resources, investing profits, and providing for members who were injured or retired. Some pirate organizations operated like early forms of insurance companies, with crews contributing to funds that would support members who were wounded in battle or could no longer work. Others invested their profits in legitimate businesses, creating networks of shops, taverns, and trading posts throughout the Caribbean that served both as sources of income and as intelligence-gathering operations. The most successful pirate leaders were often those who understood economics and could manage the financial affairs of their crews effectively, ensuring that profits were maximized and fairly distributed, while also planning for the long-term sustainability of their operations. The medical knowledge and practices of pirates were drawn from a wide variety of cultural traditions and practical experience. Pirate crews often included individuals with medical training ranging from formally educated surgeons to traditional healers who understood herbal remedies and folk medicine. The dangerous nature of pirate life meant that medical care was always in high demand, and crews that could provide effective treatment for injuries and illnesses had significant advantages over those that couldn't. Many pirates became skilled in treating common maritime ailments like scurvy, dysentery, and various tropical diseases, as well as battle wounds from swords, muskets, and cannon fire. The democratic nature of pirate society meant that medical knowledge was often shared freely among crew members, with experienced pirates teaching others how to treat wounds, prepare medicines, and recognize the symptoms of various diseases. Some pirates specialized in medical care and were highly valued for their skills, often receiving larger shares of treasure or special privileges in recognition of their importance to the crew's survival. The relationship between pirates and the natural environment of the Caribbean was intimate and complex. Successful pirates had to become expert naturalists who understood the behavior of winds, currents, tides, and weather patterns. They learned to read the signs that indicated approaching storms, to find fresh water on seemingly barren islands, and to navigate by the stars when compasses and charts were unreliable. Many pirates developed deep knowledge of marine life, learning which fish were safe to eat, how to catch them effectively, and how to use marine resources for everything from food to ship repair. They also became expert at identifying edible plants, medicinal herbs, and other useful resources found on Caribbean islands. This environmental knowledge was often acquired from indigenous peoples who had been living in the region for thousands of years, and it was essential for survival in an environment that could be both paradise and death trap, depending on one's knowledge and preparation. The artistic traditions of pirate culture extended far beyond the stereotypical images of skull and crossbones flags. Pirates created a rich visual culture that included elaborate ship decorations, personal ornamentation, tattoos, and various forms of folk art. Many pirate ships were decorated with colorful paint schemes, carved figureheads, and distinctive banners that served both to intimidate enemies and to express the crew's identity and values. Personal decoration was also important, with pirates often wearing jewelry, distinctive clothing, and tattoos that told stories about their adventures, achievements, and cultural backgrounds. Some pirates were skilled artists who created maps, portraits, and other visual records of their experiences, while others practiced traditional crafts adapted to the maritime environment. The mixing of different cultural traditions within pirate crews led to the development of unique artistic styles that combined elements from European, African, and indigenous American traditions, creating new forms of expression that would influence Caribbean culture for generations. The communication networks that pirates maintained were essential for their success and survival. These networks included both formal systems for coordinating operations and informal channels for sharing information. Gossip and news pirates used a variety of methods to communicate across long distances, including signal flags, message bottles, coded letters, and networks of informants in major ports. Some pirates became specialists in gathering and transmitting information, serving as intelligence brokers who sold valuable news about shipping schedules, naval movements, and political developments. The informal communication networks were equally important, with pirates sharing information in taverns, markets, brothels, and other meeting places throughout the Caribbean. These communication systems allowed pirate crews to coordinate complex operations involving multiple ships, to warn each other about threats, and to share opportunities for profitable raids. Pirates who were cut off from these networks found themselves operating in dangerous isolation, while those who maintained good communications could stay one step ahead of their enemies and take advantage of the best opportunities. The technological innovations that emerged from pirate activities were often driven by necessity and the need to gain any possible advantage over better equipped enemies. Pirates modified their weapons, ships, and equipment in creative ways that sometimes led to significant improvements in maritime technology. They developed new techniques for ship handling that maximized speed and maneuverability, created improvised weapons and tools from whatever materials were available, and pioneered new approaches to naval combat that emphasized surprise psychology and unconventional tactics. Some pirates were skilled craftsmen who could manufacture or repair complex equipment using primitive tools and limited resources. Their innovations were often adopted by legitimate maritime forces, particularly techniques that proved effective in combat or that solved common problems faced by all sailors. The spirit of innovation and experimentation that characterized pirate culture contributed to the rapid development of maritime technology during the golden age of sail. The educational systems that existed within pirate communities were informal but effective, with knowledge and skills being passed down through apprenticeship, mentorship, and practical experience. Young pirates learned navigation by working alongside experienced navigators, combat skills by training with veteran fighters, and seamanship by participating in all aspects of ship operations. Some pirates were literate and numerate, and they often served as teachers for their less educated crewmates. The democratic nature of pirate society meant that education was valued and that those who acquired new skills could improve their status within the crew. Some pirates used their earnings to educate themselves, learning to read and write, studying navigation and mathematics, or acquiring other knowledge that would make them more valuable to their crews. The informal education system of pirate communities was remarkably effective at producing skilled sailors, fighters, and leaders, many of whom went on to successful careers in legitimate maritime professions. The psychological aspects of pirate life were complex and often contradictory. Pirates had to balance the need for aggression and violence in their professional activities with the need for cooperation and trust within their crews. Many pirates developed sophisticated psychological techniques for intimidating their enemies, while maintaining the loyalty and respect of their followers. The use of fear and reputation as weapons was particularly important, with some pirates cultivating terrifying personas that made their enemies surrender without fighting, while others focused on building reputations for fairness and honor that attracted high-quality recruits to their crews. The stress and trauma of pirate life took a toll on many individuals, leading to problems with alcohol, violence, and mental health that pirate communities had to find ways to address. Some pirates developed strong bonds of friendship and loyalty that lasted throughout their lives, while others became isolated and paranoid, unable to trust anyone in a profession where betrayal could mean death. The geographical knowledge that pirates accumulated was extensive and detailed, covering not just the major islands and shipping routes of the Caribbean, but also countless hidden harbors, secret passages, sources of fresh water, and other information that was crucial for survival and success. Pirates created their own maps and charts that were often more accurate and detailed than official government surveys, particularly for areas that were remote or poorly explored. This geographical knowledge was one of the most valuable assets that experienced pirates possessed, and it was often shared only with trusted associates or crew members. Some pirates specialized in piloting and could guide ships through dangerous waters that would be impossible for outsiders to navigate. The intimate knowledge of Caribbean geography that pirates developed gave them enormous advantages over naval forces and merchant ships that were unfamiliar with local conditions. The maritime archaeology of pirate sites has revealed fascinating details about their daily lives, material culture, and technological capabilities. Excavations of pirate shipwrecks have uncovered everything from weapons and navigational instruments to personal possessions and food remains, providing insights into what pirates actually owned, ate, and valued. Archaeological evidence has also revealed details about ship construction and modification techniques, showing how pirates adapted their vessels for specific purposes and environments. Land-based pirate sites have yielded evidence of their settlements, defensive works, and economic activities, revealing that many pirate communities were more complex and permanent than previously thought. The archaeological record also provides evidence of the cultural mixing that occurred in pirate communities, with artifacts showing influences from European, African, and indigenous American traditions. This physical evidence helps to separate fact from fiction in our understanding of pirate life and culture. The legacy of pirate democracy and self-governance has had lasting influences on political thought and practice. The democratic institutions that pirates developed were remarkably advanced for their time, including elected leadership, written constitutions, systems of checks and balances, and provisions for the rights of minority groups. These political innovations were created by practical necessity rather than abstract theory, but they demonstrated that ordinary people could govern themselves effectively without traditional hierarchies based on birth or wealth. Some historians argue that pirate democracy influenced later democratic movements, including the American Revolution and other struggles for self-governance, while others see pirate political systems as parallel developments that arose from similar conditions and needs, regardless of their direct influence. Pirate democracies demonstrated that alternative forms of political organization were possible, and that common people could create fair and effective systems of governance when given the opportunity. The economic impact of piracy on global trade extended far beyond the Caribbean, affecting shipping costs, insurance rates, and commercial practices throughout the Atlantic world. The threat of piracy forced merchants to invest in armed escorts, faster ships, and alternative routes, all of which increased the cost of trade and ultimately affected prices for consumers in Europe and the Americas. The uncertainty created by piracy also led to innovations in banking, insurance, and commercial law as businesses sought ways to protect themselves against losses. Some regions became so dangerous that certain trade routes were abandoned entirely, while others developed specifically to avoid known pirate havens. The global nature of these economic effects demonstrates that piracy was not just a local Caribbean phenomenon, but a significant factor in the development of international commerce and the modern global economy. The seasonal rhythms of pirate life were closely tied to the natural cycles of the Caribbean environment, with crews adapting their activities to take advantage of favorable weather, avoid dangerous storms, and time their operations to coincide. With the movement of merchant shipping, the dry season from December to May was generally preferred for long-distance voyages and major operations, while the wet season was often spent in sheltered harbors, preparing for the next year's activities. These seasonal patterns also affected recruitment, with many pirates joining crews at the beginning of the sailing season and leaving at the end, either to pursue other activities or to enjoy their profits in more comfortable surroundings. The agricultural cycles of Caribbean colonies also influenced pirate activities, as the harvest seasons brought increased shipping activity and opportunities for raids. Understanding these seasonal patterns was crucial for successful piracy, and experienced crews planned their activities months in advance to take maximum advantage of favorable conditions. The religious diversity within pirate communities reflected the multicultural nature of their crews and the complex spiritual needs of people living dangerous and uncertain lives. While some pirates were devout Christians who maintained traditional religious practices, others developed syncretic beliefs that combined elements from different traditions, and still others abandoned formal religion entirely. Many pirate crews included individuals from different religious backgrounds, including Christians of various denominations, Muslims, followers of African traditional religions, and practitioners of indigenous American spiritual traditions. This diversity led to the development of unique religious practices that served the specific needs of pirate communities. Some pirates sought spiritual protection through charms, amulets, and rituals that they believed would keep them safe in battle or bring them luck in their ventures. Others found comfort in traditional prayers and religious ceremonies. The tolerance for religious diversity that existed in many pirate communities was remarkable for its time and reflected the practical need to maintain unity among crews composed of people from very different backgrounds. The technological knowledge that pirates acquired and shared included not just maritime skills, but also expertise in metallurgy, carpentry, textiles, and other crafts that were essential for maintaining their ships and equipment. Pirates often included skilled craftsmen who could repair weapons, make sailcloth, work metal, and perform other specialized tasks that would have been expensive or impossible to obtain through legitimate channels. This technical knowledge was often shared freely within pirate communities, with experienced craftsmen teaching their skills to others and innovations being quickly adopted by different crews. Some pirates became renowned for their technical expertise and were sought after for their specialized knowledge. The practical focus of pirate technology meant that they were often quick to adopt useful innovations while abandoning techniques that didn't provide clear advantages. This pragmatic approach to technology contributed to the rapid development of maritime skills and equipment during the golden age of piracy. The cultural exchange that occurred through pirate activities helped to create the distinctive Caribbean culture that emerged during the colonial period. Pirate crews served as vectors for the transmission of languages, music, food traditions, and other cultural elements across the region. The multicultural nature of pirate communities meant that they were often at the forefront of cultural innovation and mixing, creating new traditions that combined elements from different sources. Some of the musical styles, culinary traditions, and artistic forms that we associate with the Caribbean today have their roots in this period of intense cultural exchange facilitated by piracy and other maritime activities. The influence of pirate culture can still be seen in Caribbean folklore, language, and popular traditions. demonstrating the lasting impact of these temporary communities of outcasts and adventurers. The medical challenges faced by pirates were severe and constant, including not only battle wounds, but also the many diseases and health problems associated with life at sea in a tropical environment. Malnutrition was a persistent problem despite the pirates' access to captured supplies, as the lack of fresh fruits and vegetables led to scurvy and other deficiency diseases. Tropical diseases like yellow fever, malaria, and dysentery were major killers that could devastate entire crews. And the constant exposure to sun, salt water, and harsh weather took a toll on everyone who chose the pirate life. Pirates developed various strategies for dealing with these health challenges, including the use of traditional medicines, careful attention to diet when possible, and the recruitment of individuals with medical knowledge. Some pirate crews became known for their relatively good health practices, while others suffered heavy casualties from preventable diseases. The ability to maintain crew health was often a key factor in determining which pirate operations succeeded and which failed. The evolution of pirate tactics and strategies over time reflected both changing conditions in the Caribbean and the ongoing arms race between pirates and the forces trying to stop them. Early pirates often relied on small, fast vessels and hit-and-run tactics that allowed them to strike quickly and disappear before naval forces could respond. As naval patrols became more effective, pirates adapted by developing new strategies, including the use of multiple ships operating in coordination, the establishment of fortified bases, and the cultivation of political support from colonial authorities. Some pirates evolved into quasi-legitimate organizations that provided services, like protection and transportation, while maintaining the option to engage in traditional piracy when opportunities arose. The most successful pirate leaders were those who could adapt their tactics to changing conditions while maintaining the loyalty and effectiveness of their crews. This evolutionary process continued throughout the golden age of piracy, with each generation of pirates learning from the successes and failures of their predecessors. As we continue our journey through the world of Caribbean piracy, it becomes clear that these were not simply criminals operating on the margins of society, but rather participants in a complex alternative economy and culture that developed in response to the specific conditions of the early colonial Caribbean. Their story is one of adaptation, innovation, and survival in a harsh environment where traditional social structures provided little protection or opportunity for ordinary people. The legacy of Caribbean piracy extends far beyond the romantic adventures depicted in popular culture, encompassing significant contributions to maritime technology, democratic governance, cultural exchange, and economic development. As you continue to listen to these tales of adventure and survival, remember that you're learning about real people who faced extraordinary challenges and found creative ways to build meaningful lives in circumstances that would have defeated less determined individuals. Their stories remind us of the human capacity for adaptation and innovation, and of the complex relationships between freedom and responsibility, adventure and security, individual ambition and community solidarity that continue to shape our world today. So let yourself drift deeper into these historical waters, where the line between myth and reality blurs like the horizon at sunset, and where the spirit of adventure that drove these long ago pirates continues to inspire dreamers and adventurers in every generation. Sweet dreams, everyone, and may your own voyages through life be filled with as much courage, creativity, and camaraderie as those of the pirates who once sailed these crystal blue Caribbean waters in search of fortune, freedom, and their place in history.